Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I want to do another quick round of recent horror reads. I have a good variety here, so let's just jump in. First, I want to talk about Kill River 2 by Cameron Roubique, which I received from the author. This, as you can probably guess, is the sequel to Kill River, which is a story about a girl named Cindy who goes off to summer camp and along with her friends ends up in a water park facing down a slasher. And this book takes place in the following summer where she's dealing with the aftermath of those events when another water park opens up in her own hometown, and things go from there when she starts to worry that her slasher killer is back. And I very much enjoyed this one. I would personally recommend starting back with Kill River if you haven't started this series, because this really is a sequel and does build on the events of the first book. It makes sense on its own, but you'll just get so much more out of the story. I really like the character development in this one. You get to see Cindy a little bit older, a little bit more mature, and most importantly, you really get to see her traumatized by what happened the previous summer, which I really liked the fact that she didn't just bounce back, but was actually affected. You get to see her struggling with PTSD, and that was definitely my favorite aspect of this book. I thought the pacing in this one was even a little stronger than the first one. You get into the action a little bit sooner and there's a good build towards the climax. As you would expect with Roubique's books, they are full of fun, slashery goodness that is very reminiscent of a slasher movie, and particularly this one feels like a slasher movie sequel, which I think is what he was going for, and he very much succeeded. So I think this one is a lot of fun. I definitely recommend it to anyone who's read Kill River. It's well worth picking up this next one. I think it really adds to the story, and I'm now very excited for Kill River 3, which is supposed to be coming soon. So I recommend reading this one so that you are ready to go when that one comes out. Next, I read a horror anthology, and that was Other Voices, Other Tombs, which is edited by John Brhel and Joseph Sullivan. This I received a copy from the publisher Cemetary Gates Media, and I was very excited to accept this for review because the author lineup is fantastic. There are so many of my favorites in here, including Kealan Burke and Michael Wehunt, along with a lot of authors that I'd heard of and wanted to read for a really long time. This particular anthology does not have a theme around it, so instead you just get a really good variety of stories. I think that anthologies are a really good way to sample new authors' work without committing to a full-length novel, and I really enjoyed getting to see all the different takes on the stories and the different directions they went. I'll say that the entire collection was well written and well edited, and I think there's something in here for just about everyone. As with every short story collection, I connected with some of the stories more than others, just depending on the author, their type of story, etc. I will list my Goodreads review down below where I talk a little bit more about some of the short stories, but to let you know, I had two favorites in the collection. One was called The Governess, which was written by Ania Ahlborn, which again is another fantastic, well-known female author. And I like this one because it was all about a woman who gets a super fancy baby monitor because she is really afraid of her son dying of SIDS, and she just gets one of these crazy ones that tracks his heart rate and all of that. And as a new mom, especially a mom that came home with a baby from the NICU, I related to this story because I actually had people suggesting that I get one of these really crazy baby monitors, and so I definitely related to her anxieties. I decided to go with a video monitor myself, but not a super crazy one, and this story involves this baby monitor basically having glitches and being weird and doing strange things. And even though my own baby monitor isn't haunted, I think it's actually done some of the same glitches, which is probably where she got some of the inspiration for this story. So I found that super creepy. I would say this is the creepiest or scariest story in the collection. I really enjoyed it, and it was definitely worth checking out. The other story I want to highlight here is The Switch by Cameron Chaney, who of course has a YouTube channel, and I do consider him to be an online friend. But regardless of that, I loved his story, and it was just so much fun. His story is basically the horror version of the Parent Trap movie, which is an amazing premise, and the execution was just as much fun as that sounds. I really enjoyed that one as well. It had a really good twist, and I just loved it. I don't want to give away too much, but that one is one that is very much worth checking out. Beyond that, there were definitely other standouts in the collection, ones that had good body horror, ones that made me feel very claustrophobic. Again, I'll list my Goodreads review down below, but I do think again that everyone will find something in this collection. Some of the stories were more literary, some of them were more genre-based, and overall it was well worth checking out. I'm very glad I got the opportunity to read it, and I'll definitely be revisiting some of these stories in the future. Finally, I read a book called Rules of Vanishing by Kate Alice Marshall. This is a young adult horror novel that I received from the publisher, and this follows a young girl, or rather a teenager, whose sister went missing a year ago. People believe that she ran off with a boy, but the main protagonist does not necessarily think that's the case. There is a local legend that involves a girl back in years ago that went into the woods and disappeared and was possibly murdered, and they were fixated by this local legend. So the main protagonist believes that her sister Becca may have also disappeared going after that girl. So this is an interesting one because it kind of blurs the line between a mystery novel with a possible supernatural horror element to it. I've heard this described as magical realism, and I think that's a fair comparison. I didn't personally find this one super scary, but keep that in mind, the fact that I normally read very intense adult horror novels, so I think that this one wasn't necessarily intended for me. It did feel very much like a young adult novel. It actually avoided a lot of the tropes I don't like. There wasn't a lot of emphasis on relationships between boys and girls, etc. But I do feel that it just felt like it was written for a younger audience, and that felt very obvious to me. So while I didn't entirely love this one, it's still one that I would have liked a lot more if I had read it as a teenager myself, and I would really like to put this in the hands of one of my teenage cousins because I really do think they might enjoy it. If you're not someone who reads a lot of horror, you might find this one creepy. I have seen other reviewers describe this one as a little bit creepy, and the really cool thing about it, which I want to mention, is that it's done in a semi-multimedia sort of style. So included in the regular chapters, there's also transcripts and descriptions of video recordings and pictures that were taken off the teenager's phone. So this book has a very much a found footage feeling to it, and I do think that it accomplished that. It actually did a really good job. I'm not always a fan of these multimedia books, and I like the fact that this one didn't take it too far. Instead, I think that it balanced that without feeling gimmicky or over the top, and I really did like it. So while I did not feel like the target audience while reading this, I did feel too old for it, I would still recommend it to people who normally read a lot of young adult books and don't mind reading something targeted to that younger audience, or I would personally recommend this to teenagers. Again, I think this would be a great gift for someone who's in those teenage years themselves. I could really see myself liking this had I read it several years ago. But that is my quick review of Rules of Vanishing, and I would love to know, with this book as well as the other ones, which of them are you most interested in checking out for yourself? Have you read any of them? I'd love to hear your opinions, as long as you keep them spoiler free. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help me with those YouTube algorithms. And as always, I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.